watching it come, and it felt like, you know, you watch those big medieval movies where the army is coming at you, and I'm like, I can't do this, Krista.
They're good. Okay, video's going, camera's going.
This is you. This is you.
Okay, let's concentrate on her.
It's not. It's not.
Yeah.
I would have dressed up.
Wisdom,
This isn't you dressed up?
and
No, this is me coming straight out of the studio.
Well, it looks perfect.
Yay! No,
I
gorgeous.
don't know. I'll show you the couple of interviews that I taped with me doing the interviews. Oh my god! I'm like,
This is me the whole time.
We'll start.
He'll edit this out.
He'll edit everything. Yeah,
He'll make us look
make
good.
Me look, 30 years younger, and it'll be all great.
Thank you kindly. Thank you in advance for making sure that.
There's photoshopping stuff. That's all around. So here we are with the fabulous entrepreneur of FlitterMouse, Danita Stallard, and who lives in and about Flin Flon, Manitoba. We're in the Uptown Emporium. My name is Crystal Colt, and I just love this artist.
Oh, thank you.
And everything that she does. Her spirit is both in and off the page, always. And how did you get into this, Danita?
I was always a doodler. It came very early, and my parents will attest there was not a single scrap of paper in the house that did not have a doodle on it somewhere. My mom likes to tell me that she still finds doodles in the backs of books and the backs of receipts and just everywhere. And I just found that as I was growing up and starting to look at career options that I wasn't happy unless I was making art. And so I just decided if that's the way it's going to be, I'll just keep making art.
I remember when you were working for another business, I would get, I think, invoices from you or something, and they would be, calligraphied, and
that's what I mean. That's
around. It was always going, oh, this is really beautiful.
Yeah, I just can't stop adding doodles to things.
Yeah, it was so gorgeous. And so you have been a full-time business person, artist, for how many years now?
I started full-time about 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Wow. And so Flann, Flann, is your first graphic novel?
It is.
Is it? Yeah.
For sure. I was so excited to start that project. It was one of those things, love making art, love telling stories, and the light bulb kind of goes on when you're like, oh wait, I can do both those things at the same time, make graphic novels, yes.
And it's just, if anybody has a chance to go onto her website or on the Uptown Emporium website and take a look at it, because her artwork is extraordinary. And I don't know, how many hours weeks, months, years did it take for you to be able to do that book?
For Flann?
Flann.
The first issue took about 1.5 years to get solidly in a place where I was ready to get it printed. And the second issue, we ran into some times with quarantines and shutdowns, so that one took a bit longer just to get it out into the world. But
as an artist, how did you manage? Was it like, okay, I'm fine, I like to work in my studio anyways during COVID, or was it more challenging? Obviously, because you're a business, it was more challenging.
Well, everybody had their own unique challenges during that time, and still, moving forwards, there's always going to be hurdles to jump. And I found that because I tend to work in my studio, that part wasn't so much an issue. I could still sit down and work. What I really missed was things like being able to go to the galleries and going to the craft shows and just kind of getting out and being amongst other artists. That kind of took a hit, but happily we're starting to get things back underway and able to see people again, which is always good.
I know. In my world of choral singing, it was it was almost decimated. The community, it just was really, really, really difficult a couple of years. But yet again, once again, people are singing. Art somehow always finds a way, I think, to survive these things.
Well, art's such a necessary part of being a human, right? It's a form of expression, and it's a form of finding joy, and it's a form of just letting your soul breathe, you know?
Exactly. I love that, letting your soul breathe. Exactly. I think, the decompression that happens from being able to just spend some time without judgment, even just spend some time with your art,
for sure,
and enjoy it is really, really important. So it took you about 2 years by the time Flan number 1 was created. Then Flan number 2.
Oh, she's out on the shelves.
Yeah.
We're hitting the shelves running. So.
And what was that process like? Once you've already have your storyline set, is it easier or more challenging to keep going into the next?
Well, the fun thing about working with graphic novels is that it's definitely a constant learning process. And I'm the crazy one that decided I was going to do it all myself. So I definitely had a lot more, I wouldn't say hurdles, it was more learning opportunities to run into, because generally you would split up the jobs between somebody would do the page layout, somebody else would do the coloring, somebody else would make sure that the fonts and the typography was beautiful, and because I did that all myself, the first one, there was a lot of learning and a lot of issues I would run into that I didn't realize were a thing I needed to know, such as I needed to know what bleed and trim meant, and I needed to know how the pages were constructed and the books put together so that I could make sure my double page spreads fell together correctly, like all these little things that you just don't realize are a thing until you're making it. So the first one was a huge learning curve, and the second one it felt almost too easy because you'd learned those lessons along the way, and it's like, oh, now I'm just pro now, I can just do this.
I think that is kind of the story of success in life, in anything, is that you saw these challenges and you just didn't abandon the task. You just and maybe when it's kind of incremental over time, you kind of, okay, this is a challenge. Okay, good. This is another challenge. Let's deal with that.
Oh, one thing I like to talk about when I'm especially working with younger artists is that you've got to keep adding tools to your tool belt, right? Like, you can be great with your graphic pencil, but if all you do is graphic pencils, you're maybe not looking at the type of paper you're using.
Right.
And so, that's something that you can learn how to do and add that to your tool belt, so later on you can just keep getting better and better and better, and it all builds up and adds into a wonderful whole.
It does, yeah. I find that even with this Uptown Emporium, we just sort of somehow launched into it quite accidentally because of COVID, wanting to support artisans and people like you that have helped us with marketing and so many people in the community and the artisans and artists themselves. I think it's okay to try to figure your way out through it.
Oh, very much so. If you're not making mistakes, you're doing something wrong. Well, you have to try it and see what doesn't work so that you can learn what does work.
Well, exactly right. And then usually there's a workaround, or there's a way of making it so that you're satisfied enough with it at that moment to be able to go to your next
level. That is
level.
Definitely a crucial skill for all artists, especially, is to learn when, okay, this is good enough.
Yes. Yeah.
We're going to set it down and let it live the way that it is.
Don't you find that sometimes when you set it down and let it live, and if you come back to it, sometimes it could be the next day, sometimes it could be 10, you're too young, but 10 years later, and you go, wow, I can't believe that was accomplished.
Yeah, you kind of look at it and you have that memory of looking at it going, oh, it's not perfect. But you look back at it and go, you know what? It was actually a lot better. Your inner critic can be pretty harsh sometimes. Sure. And I think it's really important to have other people around you. That's part of what I missed when we were talking about lockdowns, is having those other people to tell you, you know what? From an outside perspective, it's actually a lot better than you're thinking it is.
And I think there's something about the genesis of a creation when it's in its all raw pureness that is really beautiful and shouldn't be thrown into the wastebasket.
Oh no, there's always bits and pieces that you can salvage, and
or even for later on, maybe it's this thing that, oh yes, this is what I was thinking about when I did that.
Mm-hmm. It comes back to my tool belt thought. Sometimes when you set out to do a project, you don't quite have all the tools in your belt yet to accomplish what your vision is, but that doesn't mean that later on you can't revisit it, or that doing it too early was not of value. you're building that skill set, and eventually you're going to come back to it and pick out all those wonderful pieces and come back with your full tool belt and make it even better.
And when you have sometimes that full tool belt, sometimes things can come at you from a totally opposite direction that you ever experienced, and you go, well, I think I have something in my tool belt that knows how to do that.
You get to a certain point where you become kind of like MacGyver. You're like, I don't have the correct tools, but I have enough skills where I can make this work somehow.
It's funny, I even like example is again the store, the Uptown Emporium. I've done musicals. I've built things from scratch in different ways, but I've never been a business person, and I there's still a lot that needs to be learned about doing
totally different set of skills Crystal.
Totally different set of skills, but yet it is a creation. And so it feels like there are kind of some. I think the commonality is don't panic.
That's very important. Very important.
Somebody will know how to help, and providing people are kind, And I think as an artist, isn't that when either you're evaluating your artwork or you release it into the world?
There's something to be said about having that little bit of extra courage to be able to share your art, because I know I'm one of them. I'm an artist who took quite a long time to start actually feeling comfortable putting my stuff out. Right. It's definitely, you have to be able to separate yourself from it and say, this is mine, but it's also now belongs to the world. So it's going to have other eyes on it, and you're going to get criticism, which is not always fun, but there's something to be said about being able to take it and not take it personally. And not take it personally.
Yeah, I agree. And then try to understand what those words were meant to convey, because it may not be you suck. it just might be I'm deeply interested in it, and I don't understand why you chose this person for this part, or whatever the case might be.
Yeah,
and which is always an interesting conversation, really.
Well, it's part of being any kind of artist, putting yourself out there, right? And I know especially when I talk to younger artists, I have the conversation. It's like talking to my younger self. They're like, well, I don't really want to show anyone. I don't really, I don't go and I don't want to sell it, or I don't want to, show it to my mom or whatever. And I'm like, you know what, that's okay. You're allowed to make art just for yourself. I know I still do. I set aside time in my schedule that it's my art time. I get to make whatever I want, and it's not going to be good. It's me experimenting, or maybe it's something that's really personal for me, and that's just for me,
Exactly.
And I feel like that's something that we sometimes lose in today's society, where especially when you become a career artist, is well, you have to make stuff to sell.
Hustle.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's important to remember that we're allowed to still make stuff just for my own kitchen wall,
Exactly. And I think for me it's projects. So there are absolutely projects that I'm doing at any time where it's a very, very private project, because I just have to get my sea legs.
Yep.
I really can't, I'm not prepared for any deep criticism, because it might be a totally crazy idea.
Well, and sometimes it's just something that's so close to your heart that you're not ready to share it yet, and that's fine.
And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, to keep it. So, any other really interesting new projects that you're doing in the next little while that you'd like to share?
I am working super hard on the final volume of Flawn. It was, I know.
So excited.
I am excited about it too, Crystal. This is the one where they're going to go underground and discover, they're going to discover some little critters in the mines. So I had always planned Flawn to be a trilogy. I wanted to really showcase our wonderful northern area. I wanted to have one that was set in the forests, one that was set on the lakes, and one, of course, in the mines. So this will be book 3, and I'm working real hard on that one. And
so you're so brilliant, and you always had the vision. You seem to know exactly where this character is going to be weaving through, and just so in awe.
Well, thank you. I find it so funny to hear you say that because it's seeing it from an outside perspective. From the studio's perspective, there's a lot of scrap paper wadded up and thrown around, and there's a lot of ideas that get tossed around and kind of scrapped because you're like, that was no good or that didn't work. So it's a little chaotic from my end, but it's really good to hear that it came together.
Wisdom. That's wisdom of going. Isn't that the adventure of anything? Is just like I'm going here. Oh no, I think I'm going to go like a little bit to the right and then here.
Well, for me that was part of the reason I chose to do Flawn all on my own. Is it's not so much the end product. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. Having that book in my hands was super satisfying, and it was like a huge goal that just felt so great to have completed. But it wasn't so much getting the shipment of the first books that felt like the accomplishment to me. It was more the journey of learning how to do pagination and learning how to adjust colors so that they print correctly. Like all those little things that I didn't realize I needed to know. For me, that was the real adventure and the real fun of the project.
So as you were going through your storytelling of Flawn, is there a character that really surprised you, that you just fell in love with, that you didn't really, or that just all of a sudden demanded to be on the page more than you expected?
Well, I really love all of the characters for different reasons. I think that they're each a little part of me, right? Yeah. And so we've got our main characters, Flynn and Flawn. Yeah. And they're always fun. We haven't quite met Flynn in the books yet, but he's our researcher who's gotten lost in the woods. So he's the one that he's me going out in the woods and not quite knowing where I'm going to end up by the end of the day, just wandering around and finding cool things. And we've got Flawn, who's our adventurous experience and just wanting to be out there and doing things. And I guess the one that surprised me was James, my little prospector character, because I had originally wanted him to be very much like Yukon Gold Rush, wild mountain man, fighting bears and being brave out in the woods. And he didn't want to be that. Like, as I was doing the sketches and solidifying my characters, I realized he's scared of bears. He doesn't really want to be out there in the woods in the creepiness, right, in the dark. And he's quite happy to be at home, you know.
I love that so much. Yeah, that's what I imagine if I was an author, that there would be these little surprises that you think person's going here, like you said.
You know, you think you're in control until you're actually putting them on the page, and you're like, how come you're not doing what I told you, man? Can't you just follow the script? And sometimes, you know, they take on their own little personalities, which I'm really grateful. When I look at it, I look at the final project and the final overall script, I'm like, you know what, it's a lot better this way. My original vision wouldn't have been as fun, you know, it just wouldn't have felt right.
Well, I totally agree with James.
I needed a little scaredy cat.
So good. I find again this town Flin Flon. It's such a quirky town. And I remember I was judgmental, sorry, Flawners, of Flintappity Flaunton to a certain extent. I kind of wished we could have been represented by an Inukshuk or a wolf or something like that. And there's this prospector, until I got to understand that the design was from the great Al Cap, and that how interesting that the whole name and the whole beginnings of this town was again a science fiction character in a dime store novel. I mean, that is really, really cool. This is a cool place.
It's a hidden gemstone we got up here, because I can't count how many times I've had conversations with people about my books, and they're like, well, where did you come up with this? It's, you know, you kind of go, well, I was lucky enough to grow up in and around this quirky little town in the middle of nowhere. It's in the middle of the woods that was named after a science fiction character, and you kind of come to love the strangeness of it, and the fact that it's just, you know, we're out here in the woods, and we love our little guy who got into a fish-shaped submarine looking for gold. Like it's such a fun refreshing way of looking at the world, right? That there's still adventure out there. There's still things to discover, and
there is, there is. The analogy I say sometimes is I feel like Flin Flon is like an island surrounded by land and trees. But
it can feel like that sometimes.
We're sitting here, but people can come here and you can actually have a decent quality of life in this community. You're not spending $500,000 on a house. You do have your beautiful surroundings, but you have your privacy, and we have people. People live in Flin Flon. We have a cafe.
I really love you calling it an island, because it can feel like that sometimes. I know for me personally, I don't do well in cities. There's too much hustle and bustle, too much concrete. I very much need my time in nature. And when I had the chance to move up here full time, I remember my first week of being here full time was a relief. It was quiet. I could sit out in the woods and enjoy a sunset, and for me it was the stars. Like, we have beautiful night skies that you just lose when you're in the city. And it's funny because you talk to a lot of my artist friends that are especially have moved into this area or areas like it. They say the same thing. They say there's just a different quality to being outside of the city center that can be really, really good for creativity.
Yeah. My world in the music world here in Flin Flon, I'm just so busy. Like, it feels like at the big city, but what I can do is that on Fridays during the summer, I can go to my friend's cabin, which is like 20 minutes away, hop in the canoe with all my gear, and canoe to an island for a weekend, and it's more or less efferis. Like,
you have a mini adventure, and it just
it's such
resets.
a privilege just to be able to do that. I know when I was in Winnipeg, it was like you plan for 2 weeks to go blueberry picking, and here we're really lucky. So encourage everybody to try a small community as an option if they ever decide to get out of.
Take advantage of the mini adventures.
Yeah, exactly. So, Danita, anything else you'd like to share with us about you? Well, you have Flon 3 coming in, and I guess this is your busy season.
We're heading into busy season here.
Yeah.
I offer a lot of personal commissions where I love to transform people into cartoons.
Right. I purchased. I love that so much. It's just exquisite. How do people make that happen if they would like to hire you or commission you for that?
Well, you just send me a little email saying, "Hey, I want to be transformed into a cartoon." Yeah. I do have a form on my website as well.
And the website is flittermouse.com?
FlitterMouse.ca.
.ca, so FLITTERMOUSE.
.ca.
Yeah.
That's how you find me. And just send me a note saying, "Hey, I want to be a cartoon. Let's make it happen." And it's so much fun for me. I'm really honored when people will trust me with their faces.
Oh, but it's amazing. I commissioned you to do one for my son and daughter-in-law on a photo that was on their honeymoon, and I think Cecilia just burst into tears when she saw it. It was just so
hopefully
beautiful.
Happy tears.
Absolutely happy tears, because it just sort of was right there on the page about what a joyful time they had. So I thank you for that. From our family.
I'm so glad they love it.
Yeah, no, it's so great. Well, again, so thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's always fun to come and talk art.
Always. And again, this is from the Uptown Emporium, the Northern Video Podcast Center, and I want to thank Jacob Harvey for doing the video and sound for us, and the wonderful Danita Stallard.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for welcoming me into the Emporium family. And anybody out there who hasn't checked out the Emporium, come see it. It's so cool. We're full of fun, artsy people.
Yeah.